one another. So the name in a passport is the name as the name in an ID card. But if we only have this typing system, we don't have any underlying semantic, we can't automatically detect any relationship between these different attributes. So this was the main reason for introducing ontologies. The ontologies provide a formal specification for concepts and also give a semantic of the possible interrelationship between different concepts. In the trust negotiation environment, using ontologies means associating to the different attributes in the different credential a given concept. So a concept in our ontology is described as following. It is given by a tuple, and we have a set of keywords and a set of attributes. The set of keywords are English words just expressing a given concept, and they are one synonymous of another. And the lang set instead is the collection of the attributes that all implement the same concept. We make, of course, we can have different attributes and different credentials which are semantically equivalent, but they are defined over different domains. So for this reason, we make use of a translation function to compare the values of two semantically equivalent attribute conditions. We assume, of course, that our ontology is well defined, which means that there are no overlapping concepts, and the concepts are all organized using generalization or specialization interrelationships. So having a property-based policy, having an ontology allows us to define policies at a higher level, at a more abstract level. So we can define the policy not in terms of the specific credential, but we can define policies in terms of properties. So we can have this notion of property-based policy. A property-based policy is basically a policy expressed in terms of specific properties, and the properties are specified using the keywords of the ontologies, so that we can automatically translate a property-based policy expressed like this one in a corresponding disclosure policy specified in terms of specific attributes and certificates. So we map the marital status condition property into a certificate. We map the condition of the country being equal to USA into a specific credential and the condition against an attribute of that credential. So this concept of disclosure sets is needed for our algorithms on privacy and anonymity. A disclosure set is basically the response to a given property-based policy or to a given disclosure policy. A disclosure set is basically a set of attributes or credentials aiming at satisfying a given policy or a property-based policy. It will contain two kinds of attributes: requested and non-requested ones. Requested are attributes that are explicitly mentioned in the policy, and non-requested ones are instead attributes that are present in the disclosure policy, but they're not explicitly mentioned in the policy. And we might need to have them. We might have them because, as I said, the credential is not only collecting one single attribute, but it has a bunch of attributes. And in order to have that attribute disclosed, we need to disclose the whole credential. So the example of referring to the previous policy, this is an example of a very simple example of a disclosure set. So the trust negotiation system is organized as follows. We have different components, and the main components are the X profile that I mentioned earlier for collecting the certificates and which are credential and declaration. We have a policy database collecting the disclosure policy or the property-based policy. We have a compliance checker for checking policy satisfaction and for retrieving a remote or local credential from the X profile, and we have a tree manager, which is a data structure for keeping track of the state of the negotiation. here the focus here is that every negotiating party is always equipped with the same architecture, which means that with the same system, which means that the system is peer-to-peer, and a same party in a negotiation may act as a server, as a requester, a service requester, and in the following negotiation it might act as a requester. And how does the trust negotiation work in our model? So we have organized the trust negotiation into 3 different phases. One first phase is called the introductory phase, and it's basically the beginning of the negotiation, when the first request is sent from one side to another, and some possible introductory policy are exchanged. We have then this policy evaluation phase, which is used for exchanging policies and to define a set of credentials which have to be disclosed in order to satisfy the initial request. The initial request. So the idea is to establish a certain level of trust through this disclosure of policy, and once all these policies can be satisfied, then the actual certificates disclosure can take place. So, having given now some background on what is our TRASCI, how is our TRASCI framework is organized, I can go into the detail of the privacy issues and the privacy solutions that we have devised. So there are several issues related with privacy in trust negotiations. Since trust negotiation, by its nature, it involves the disclosure of different kind of information, and most of them are sensitive or private because they are personal of the trust negotiation party. First, in trust negotiation does not give any hint, does not control or safeguard personal information once this has been disclosed. Further, during the policy evaluation phase, there is no actual credential disclosure. Since we want to protect disclosures as much as we can, we postpone them at the end of the negotiations, which means that during the negotiation phase, an attacker may lie and claim possession of credentials which it doesn't actually have. So, as a result, some sensitive information can be inferred from a response to a request to access a resource. So some information can be inferred without even having to disclose the actual credential. And further, if some of the policies themselves may require to be protected as resources, and there is no actual protection during the policy evaluation phase for the policies themselves. Other privacy threats are related to the fact that that a credential may contain several sensitive attributes, and some of them are really not required for satisfying a policy. Sometimes you really just need one piece of information. There is one piece of the credential, one or a couple of attributes, while the credential collects the whole set of attributes. But in order to verify the digital signature and to prove the honesty and the correctness of the credential, you have to disclose the whole credential. So, which were the solutions we came up with? First, we redefined the notion of policy, and we extended again not only with the property-based policy, but with new features. Then we redefined the notion of credential, and we developed some strategies. We also began this integration with the P3P platform, which is the current standard in terms of privacy for web-based resources. So regarding the policy, we introduced the notion of policy preconditions, which means that one disclosure policy is a precondition of another one, so that one policy can be disclosed and can be open only if this precondition is satisfied.